Welcome to episode 3 of the RawAutos podcast. This is a big deal. I'm uploading 3 days in 1 week. I don't know why I think that's an accomplishment, but I think that's a pretty big deal because I just started the podcast to give everybody something to listen to during this, interesting time, i.e. coronavirus. So how you liking the show so far? Yeah, I can't hear you talking. So you could send me an email at josh@rawautos.com. Tell me what you think of the show. Tell me you love me. Tell me you hate me. Tell me you love the show, you hate the show. Give me some critiques, some criticism. For week 3, I have a fantastic guest lined up. It's a guy named John Pearley Huffman, who is a writer for Car and Driver. He's been a writer for Motor Trend. He started his career at CarCraft magazine. And he writes for the New York Times. And what's interesting about John is actually he worked at Kinko's. Yeah, very interesting. Except while he was working at Kinko's, he realized that he was extremely depressed, needed to get out of that situation, and that, he would do anything to get out of it. He loved cars. He wanted to write about cars. So he decided to create his own parody magazine of Car and Driver, calling it Car and Pearley. He sent it out to multiple magazines, and then he got job offers and 35 freelance assignments from it. Pretty interesting, right? So the first job he actually took because of money was with CarCraft magazine in 1990, and it's been going on ever since. So for 30 years, January of 1990 to January of 2020, he's been doing this for 30 years. I firmly believe you will enjoy the podcast because it's great. It is a long podcast. John is the type of person that when you get him wound up, he's ready to go, which is awesome because it gives you plenty of content to listen to, and it just helps pass the time away. Now, there was a little bit of a hiccup in the middle of the show. I thought I had my mixing board plugged into the wall. It also takes batteries because it's the Zoom Live Track L8. It also takes batteries. Plug into the wall. However you want to, power it. You can power it from a battery bank, whatever you want to do. Well, I had it plugged into a power strip, and I thought the power strip was turned on, and all of a sudden in the middle of the interview, bam, the recorder just stops working, shuts off. And I thought that there was a power surge at first. I was very, very confused. I'm like unplugging everything, and John's still on the phone, and I'm telling him, hang on one second, unplugging everything, plugging everything back in. And in doing so, I turned off and on the power strip, thinking that I turned it off and back on, later realizing that, oh no, I actually turned it on, because I didn't have the power strip button turned on to begin with. So this will include 2 cuts of the podcast. Basically, that I think it was like the first 30 or 40 minutes, whatever, of us talking, and then I will cut in the second half of that conversation. Again, it's a great conversation. I really love it. I think Pearley is a great writer. He's very entertaining, has a great voice. And I hope you very much so enjoy the podcast. I would like to mention one thing. The intro and outro tracks of the RawAutos podcast are a song called I Wish That I Was a Madman by Stefan Carlin on Epidemic Sound. And the intro is obviously instrumental, whereas the outro is not. So I hope you enjoy the music as well, because I think it's a cool song. It sounds really good. And I believe that will be the RawAutos podcast theme from now on. It's been here since episode 1. We're already at episode 3. So anyway, and also we are on Apple Podcasts. So if you have an iPhone, iPad, a Mac, whatever, go and subscribe to us, please. RawAutos podcast. I think it's pretty exciting that we're on there. So anyway, without further ado, please enjoy this interview with John Pearley Huffman of Car and Driver. How are you doing through all of this? Because you're a freelancer. This is tough for you.
Well, the thing is that the state of California changed to be to 85 passed, which basically said that the companies that hired me were supposed to convert me into an employee. Now, I thought I was going to have to incorporate and start vending as a business and everything else like that. Except that every company that hires me hired me as an employee.
Mm-hmm.
I'm now an employee of CBS, an employee of Hearst, an employee of something called Ask Staffing that deals with KDB or something else like that. Or my others. Anyhow, excuse me.
You're fine.
Anyhow, instead of being 1099, I'm now going to be W-2'd by about 5 different companies.
Oh my God.
And the good thing is that it means I don't have to pay my self-employment tax anymore. The bad thing is that getting them to pay me has become like a real chore. So, but at the same point in time, because of this, at least in the state of California, and I think most places, is the media is considered an essential industry, and you can't discriminate media on the basis of content. So we're still going.
Oh, okay.
And
okay.
Because we're still got to publish, we still got to get everything up. Nobody wants to give up their position on the internet. You still want to have a lot of content because you don't want people to forget you're around. So I just I'm going to go as soon as I get done with you. I'm going to go write someplace, and I'm going to just get it done. I'm flattered they all wanted to hire me because they could have just said like, well, screw him. He's old, he's fat, he's a white guy, get him out. And because relatively easy. I'm the easiest guy in the world to fire because they just don't have to hire me again, but they keep hiring me, so I'm happy.
Well, and that goes along with something. Your career has been pretty varied and very entertaining. I mean, you've been doing this for the past 30 years now, and you actually have. You're extremely entertaining in general. I mean, we don't know each other personally, but we know each other through social media, and we talk and joke around and whatever. But your career is extremely interesting in that you've worked for both Motor Trend and Car and Driver, Carcraft Magazine. You actually created your own satire magazine just to get hired?
Yeah, that's how I did it. Well, the way I got hired was I got through with college. I did well in school. I was going to law school, and I got done with school, had a high GPA, did really well on the LSATs, had all my law school, literally had all my law school applications in front of me, and realized that I didn't know a single lawyer who was happy.
Mm-hmm.
And my father. So I thought I better think about this some more, and I literally tossed all those aside, and then I wandered in the wilderness for a while, and I went to work, and I went to grad school in communication studies at UCSB for no apparent reason, and then I was working at Kinko's, in the marketing department at Kinko's, which had its national headquarters here in Santa Barbara. It was founded here in Santa Barbara. And I'm sitting there doing all I can to work there, and hating thinking, holy shit! If I don't do something, I'm going to work in the quick copy industry for the rest of my life. Which at that point in time started giving me suicidal thoughts I never had before. And I always loved car magazines. I always loved reading car magazines. It's always been my obsession. And so I said, well, I guess I'll sit down and I'll get a job in the car magazine. So I wrote a 28-page parody of Car and Driver. It's called Car Pearley. Had those old blow-in cards, and I wrote all the ads, and I wrote everything. I photographed, I did everything else like that. I sent to every car magazine in the country I could find. This is pre-internet. This is 1989. So I sent to every, I went through all the registration books in the library about car publications and found them all. I looked at everything. I just sent to everybody, and I got 4 job offers and 35 freelance assignments. And Car and Driver bought part of it and ran it in the magazine. So I think it was pretty successful. And what I got from Car and Driver covered the cost of producing it, so I was pretty happy. And but the job I took was Carcraft, because that was the best job I had offered to me.
That is absolutely amazing, because you basically superseded the blog world by 20 or about 10, 15 years realistically, because David E. Davis was I guess one of the first, bloggers technically, when he helped to create Whining Road magazine, right? And
yeah, he's up there.
But when you did this just on a whim because you were like, screw it. Where we do this now because we have the internet. You did it just because you wanted to do something. You were fed up with what you were doing already, right?
Yeah.
And
I'm sorry. No,
you're fine. You go ahead.
So, it was kind of like, I didn't have any experience. But the only thing I'd ever written for was my high school newspaper, and I had to I either had to do something. And look, there's no great secret here. There's one great secret to getting through in life is if you solve people's problems, they'll give you money for it. And and the thing is that what Car Pearley did, that was the name of my parody, was I said to every car, and a lot of people said he's going to solve our problems, and that's what it did. Because I didn't have any, I had no experience that said I could solve their problems. I had something they could hold in their hands that says I could solve their problems because I'd already published an entire magazine by myself, and I knew the genre well enough, and that I was able to parody it effectively. So it was I've always been a pretty good writer. And unlike most of the people who got hired at Peterson Publishing, which is where I started off, and which no longer exists, except for Hot Rod and Motor Trend, doesn't exist anymore. You look at it and you go, everybody they hired were people who were wrenches or motorheads. And I was the first guy they hired there who they actually hired because they thought I could write. So I thought that was a little bit weird. But I've never been a wrench. I've never been a guy who wants to. I don't care about. I never want to work on a car. I never want to do it. All I want to do is write about cars. And my heroes were people like Pat Bedard and the usual suspects, and Brock Yates and Gray Baskerville at Hot Rod, and you can just you name all the usual suspects. They're all the guys I love reading. But most particularly, the guy I loved reading the most was Gene Shepard, which nobody even remembers. Wrote for Car and Driver. But was the Gene Shepard used to write for? Who was the guy who went on to write A Christmas Story, which is one of. So he used to be a columnist for Car and Driver, and I thought, Jesus, that's the guy I want to be. I want to be Gene Shepard. And I didn't know he had a radio show. He had a radio show on the East Coast, which was hugely popular. But I was living on the West Coast, so I didn't know anything.
God, it's funny because I don't think I've heard that name in a long time. Oh my God, I completely forgot about him. I mean, not no offense to him, but
no offense, but go on.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, like I had the luxury of having my dad was big into cars. My older brother's 8 years older than I am, was big into cars, and basically taught me everything I ever wanted to know about cars. But I remember years ago we went on some vacation somewhere, I can't remember, and we were in some archival place, and my brother just happened to walk into this room, and they had boxes and boxes of archived Car and Drivers, Motor Trends, Road and Track, even Road and Track before it was Road and Track, and he bought a bunch of them. And that's funny because that's a name that I remember being in there in some of those Car and Drivers. And I just completely spaced. I can't believe I didn't remember that. That's so funny.
Yeah, well, you have to go back and look. Gene Shepard wrote a lot of things. Gene Shepard was very big in New York. This is the reason why Gene Shepard wrote for Car and Driver was this is when Car and Driver was in New York. And when Car and Driver was in New York, it called on the literary scene in New York, which was actually its biggest advantage because it was getting people like Bruce McCall and Gene Shepard and all these people came out of. They didn't come out of the car world. They came out of the publishing world in New York City. And that's why that's why everybody talks about how Car and Driver was great in the 1970s.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the 1970s, it was barely a car magazine. It was first and foremost a magazine written about cars by people who were really writers.
Right.
When and PJ O'Rourke also came aboard too, did a lot of stuff there. And we don't have that. We've lost a lot of that in the last 30 years, 40 years. And when Car and Driver moved to Michigan, David E. wanted to go move there so he could shoot things with the shotguns and everything. I don't know why he goes back to Michigan. But when he moved to Michigan, he lost the connection to the New York. He lost the connection to the New York literary scene, and I think that's always been the worst thing that happened to Car and Driver. Even though I still think Car and Driver is the best car magazine, I still know Car and Driver is still great. And I love everybody I work for at Car and Driver. And work with. It's just that it's a different pull on the magazine than what it had when it was in New York.
That was always my dream, was to work for Car and Driver too. Always, every day. There was just something about it. looking at the old columns and then reading the new reviews, in the 90s and when I was an actual child and in the 2000s, but I also got to see those magazines from the 70s and the 80s, and they were brilliant.
They're really good, and they were, and the magazines. I don't think paper's going to go away completely, but obviously the world is different now, and it's as you get older, as I am, because I'm so much older than you are, is that you learn that you learn that the things that you think are permanent aren't, and the world that you can't. And I'm thinking about this about my kids, and this is the tough thing about raising my kids is I can't raise them for a world I know. I have to raise them for a world that is unknown. That the world that's going to happen as you move forward is different than the world that that you were raised for. All the assumptions that we had when we were kids, I think it may be even more profound for you because you grew up later than me, is they don't hold. Pontiac is not forever. This is one of the institutions that seem to be here forever are going to be gone, and the assumptions about how the economy works that you thought were going to happen may not exist. So it's. You have to be willing to figure out. You have to be willing to grope. You have to be willing to kind of like screw around and see what you're going to do. That's what I've been doing now. I'm working for KBB and for CBS Interactive and for people who essentially for businesses that didn't exist 15 years ago.
But have kind of taken over the landscape.
Yeah, they have. I work for a company. I work for a guy in Seattle who runs a thing called Clipnick, which is about used cars. And he's a nice guy. He's a guy starting a site called Clipnick, and and it didn't take. It's not like it's a big bureaucracy. It's a guy working out of his room. And Clipnick's a pretty nice little site if you care about used cars. So it just depends.
Well, and that is you raise a perfect point. Is that with the way of the world, you have to evolve or die. Adapt or die, and
yeah.
You've adapted, you've evolved, you've been, and I guess that's a testament to your writing character, to your actual writing style. Because I think that everybody I could ever talk to. What were you gonna say?
Yeah, it's something. Right, I am very special. Go on.
So, I think everybody that I could ever talk to about you would say basically the same thing, that you are a unique specialty writer about, especially when it comes to cars, for new car reviews or something that somebody would see, if a boss sends out something and says, I need a simple review or a simple product review of this. I feel like one of the first names that would come to mind for being the most interesting of that simple review would be yours.
Thank you. It's very one of the worst things about the segment of the industry that we're in, which is the segment of the automotive writing industry, is that people think they're in the car business and they're not. They're in the media business. You have to kind of keep that in mind. That a lot of people tend to think that they are somehow wrapped up with the big wigs at GM or Ford or something else like that, or because you get to drive new cars, you are somehow wired into the system, and you're not. You are. We're on the outside looking in, and we always will be. And you have to kind of like go through life. You have to go through life understanding the difference between people who are your friends and people who are your business card to business card relationships. The people who are, the people that when the moment you die, they lift up your business card, they insert a new person underneath it. That's just a position, and all it is when things change. And and they will. It's not going to, it doesn't matter. But your friends are going to be the people you can call on anytime, and there aren't that many of them. We tend to take friendship as something that is fair. Sometimes we take it more lightly than the business relationships, when in fact the only thing that's real is the personal relationships. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And that really brings up something in my mind that when I first started my website, so I used to sell cars before I got into writing about cars. And I always said I wanted to write about cars, but the first grand vision I had about creating a website was that I wanted to be a car sales pundit of sorts, because at the end of the day, I'm writing about cars to sell you on the idea of which one you should spend your hard-earned money on. And so I've always seen it as similar to you in that sense. Now, I love the relationships I have in the car industry. Of course, some of them I do believe are my friends, but most of them, you're absolutely right, are passing friendly acquaintances that they need to sell you on an idea. But you're friendly, you don't hate each other or anything, but they realize you have a job to do and you realize that they have a job to do. And that's it.
Yeah. And it's hard. I've had people who I thought were really good friends, and I've lost them as friends in this business. And it's a very human thing. Here's the thing. I always about telling people what to buy cars. You're talking to people. You're not talking. Cars aren't going to read your stuff. Mm-hmm. People are going to read. So when people write, don't try and write it about the car. Try and write about the person who's behind the car, about what makes it feel, how it's going to make the person feel. Because sooner or later, the cars, as much as I love them, and I don't really love them as much as I like them, is that they're just big chunks of steel, and if they go away, it's a big it's not the end of the world. Mm-hmm. And it's because they are every one of them, they made very few, they only made one of. And as much as they could take, but if you remember, like, all the times I had it with my family in my truck, or all the times I've been on a racetrack with a Dodge Viper or a thing, or if I remember hanging out with my friends in a garage working on it, or these are all the moments in time that make up your life. And that's what we tend to forget. That's what we're really writing about. We're not writing about, if you write as a dry consumer advice, and you do like model overviews, and you do all that stuff that people tend to write, I don't know why anybody would read it.
Right.
The entire thing is that I want it. Thanks for saying the nice things about you, because I'm never sure if I'm successful or not. But I want people to have some reason to actually read what I write. I don't want them to look at it and kind of go like, well, that was a dry, lousy, garbagey, who cares, model overview of something that I could have gotten out of the brochure. And even good brochure writing should be stuff that makes you relate to the humanity of your life at some point in time too.
Yeah. And I did say nice things about you simply because you are one of my favorites out there. I mean, that's why I, friended you on Facebook years ago, because I was like, oh, sweet. I could be friends with John Pearley Huffman and then just chit chat with him online. And that's also why I've, asked you to do this podcast, because I think you're an interesting person. But to me, you're an interesting person mainly because of the writing style you have in an industry that's filled with.
My strategic advantage as a freelancer is most other freelancers suck. And the thing is that a lot of people, and also I'm a real freelancer. I'm not like there are a lot of people who are basically between jobs who freelance. I'm not between jobs. My job is freelancing, and so that's it focuses your mind when you have to realize that you're going to pay your mortgage with this with being a freelancer, as opposed to, well, sooner or later Evans is going to hire me. I don't want to be on staff where I have to listen to people tell me like, well, we need to generate generic copy in great huge quantities all the time. I mean, sometimes I'll do that when they hire me to do that. I don't say no to the work, but for the most part, people hire me because I write better than other people do. I don't mean to blow up my own ass, but that's kind of like the reason why I'm able to make a living.
So that is an interesting question for me when it comes to reading your stuff and talking to you, and I know that you do. I know that you do so much work, and you have done so much work. You obviously you just said you realize that once you have to pay a mortgage, once you have to pay for kids, you're like, anything go. You'll do anything in a sense, But is there something you prefer? Is there something you wish that you could have gotten into or could have been involved in?
I prefer doing feature stories. Mm-hmm. The favorite stories I've written are stuff that has been like either takes a left turn or isn't stuff that comes out of a press book. I mean, anybody can rewrite a press release. I went to Houston after the floods at Houston, without any. I just got dropped there in the middle with Mark Urbano, the photographer, and we built a story out of it. We ran around, and we talked about all the flood cars in Houston. And, we didn't know anything going in, and then we found the story. And I did these are the, I wrote, I just did a story on the parking situation, on the parking confiscation situation in Chicago. That story didn't exist. I conjured it up out of research and determination. And those are, and sometimes it's just like when you do something goofy. I think that, I wrote a story on the Nissan Murano Cross Cabriolet where we wrote the thing as a Greek epic poem. And that worked out really well, and because it was something that not everybody else is going to do, nor can they do. And I wrote it's the stories I like best are the ones where you do something that's got a twist on it, or that doesn't exist except for the fact that you make the effort to make it exist.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the problems with all of automotive media and all product media, because I think this exists in the travel industry with travel writers and with computer writer, tech writers, and everything else like that is. You get handed the story. You get handed a like, here's the press kit. Make sure all the facts of the press kit are here. You get it with the perspective. And one of the things I hate most, even though I've gone on, you go on these press trips. The problem with the press trips is they set the agenda for all the magazines. They set the agenda for all the outlets. They set the agenda for all the websites. Is everybody goes on these trips, and then they write about the trips at the same time. And one of the things that you want to do is, at least I want to do, is not be the guy who's always on the trips, always doing what everybody else is doing. You don't want to be, I don't want to be I don't want to be just another interchangeable component in a system that is generated, that is determined and set its agenda by whatever the press trips are. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the worst part of the industry. Now the good thing is that God, I can talk a lot. The good thing is that car driver gives me more opportunity than most people ever get. I mean, they let me do a thing where I wrote a complete fiction about a guy who was powering his cars with apricots. They don't, nobody else is really eager to do that type of stuff. And Car and Driver, bless its heart, has been doing that stuff for 60 years. And that's still, it's an honor to be able to do it. It's an honor to be able to say that I'm on the same mast as Gene Shepard once was, or Warren Weath, or God, even now, with guys like Dan Pund and Eddie Alterman, and Jerry Gall, and all these guys I work with, and as soon as I can remember her name, the new editor who I like quite a bit, whose name I can never remember, and which shows you how I probably should take that out, Sharon Carty, who's a very nice lady and is very good at what she does, and it's great to be able to be up there with these people. I mean, it's awesome. I mean, I'm on the same masthead as PJ O'Rourke has been. I mean, that's kind of incredible. I don't know, I lost my train of thought, but at the same point in time, I all the names I just mentioned. Can you name anybody who ran Motor Trend? Can you name anybody who wrote for Road Track other than Peter Egan? It gets thin pretty quick.
I mean, I only can just because I think you and I can, only because we're in the industry. Like, we know it, like the back of our hands in some cases. However, if I'm talking about in the 90s, when I was a kid reading Car and Driver, in the early 2000s when I was a teenager, or when I did read those 70s Car and Drivers, reading the Road and Tracks, reading the Motor Trends, no. I honestly, there are people I've had come up to me in North Carolina and say, "Oh, I know a guy who used to write for Motor Trend." And I'm like, "Who?" And they tell me his name, and I'm like, "I don't know who the hell that is." But if you were to say to me, if you were to say anybody from Car and Driver over the last 50, 60 years, I would know immediately,
Yeah. and that's there's a real difference in the way the industry works. There's a drive to be generic. There's a
Mm-hmm.
drive to be changeable. There's a drive not to have anybody become bigger than the publication. There's a certain amount of I mean, God knows I'm so anti-brand awareness. But the brand the brand can be generic. It just means something to some people in some sort of hazy notion. Motor Trend's car of the year, and the rest of it's kind of like a. I used to work for Motor Trend, so I don't want to badmouth them too much. I'll just badmouth them just enough. Is they are where they are. I mean, they're just their name on a kind of as a known award. But the personalities there, and God knows there are people there who I like quite a bit. Don't come out in the magazine, or they don't come out in the media in the same way. Though God knows, I think Johnny Lieberman is trying. At the same point in time, Car and Driver. I mean, I thought I really knew Pat Bedard. I thought I really knew Brock Yates. I thought I really knew these. And that was the brand. That the brand was the people. Then to a certain extent, to a great extent, I hope. The magazine continues to do the magazine, and now the website, and whatever else it turns into, continues to do that, to put people at the top. I mean, it's not just car; it's driver. The driver part matters,
Mm-hmm.
and I hope that's what I hope that's what continues to happen. I mean, God knows we're going to go through challenging times, and I think that it's. I hope it keeps going. You were talking to Alana.
Yeah. Yeah.
Alana is a really scary good writer.
She's
and
a cool person too. Like, she's actually a real, like, she's a badass car person.
She is. Alana is somebody I admire quite a bit. Alana comes out of the same world I came out of. She worked at Hot Rod and all that type of stuff. And I worked at Carcraft, so I obviously picked the better magazine. But what the hell? But she's starting to write for Car and Driver now.
Yeah.
And the reason, and I'm happy about that, because I want Car and Driver to be good, and it matters more to me than any other outlets. It doesn't, and that's it. I've written for the New York Times. I'm writing for the New York Times right now, and it's not the same feeling of personality that comes through, or a passion that comes at Car and Driver.
It's funny because I talked to her the other day, and I told her that I was going to have you on, and she sang your praises and how much she liked you, and she knew that I would have a good interview with you and good talk with you. And it is interesting that, again, in our circles, your name, her name, and there are others that come up, and there are names that when you say, people go, oh yeah, and it's, your name is one of those. And that's why I feel like your career with Car and Driver, and everybody else, but mainly I feel like your career with Car and Driver has been so much more interesting.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't want to look. If I was hiring an all-star team to run a car outlet of any sort, Alana's name would be up there at the top, and Jerry Gall and Dan Pond and Eddie Alterman would all be up there at the top, but so would Mark Vaughn at Auto Week, and so would Frank Marcus at Motor Trend, and there are a bunch of guys. There's Sam Smith at Road and Track.
Yeah.
These are all guys I really admire, and and they all have different talents. I mean, Sam Smith, who I don't know very well, but I know well enough to say this, is that Sam Smith does the best job of putting you in the seat of a race car as anybody who writes right now does.
Yeah.
He's there just isn't anybody who does that better than Sam. If you're gonna talk about talking about taking a cynical edge and having fun with something else like that, you want Dan Pond writing that.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to talk about being out there with having a very human experience with playing with your dogs and old Dodges, you want Alana.
Mm-hmm.
And and there are people out there, and Mark Vaughn is just. I mean, if I want somebody who's going out, who's going to hang out at a place where a whole bunch of old cars are hanging out and people are just running. I want Mark writing that because Mark's really good.
Yeah.
And so but a lot of these people we tend to go to the generic stuff, and you know, and I would rather have. I'd rather have stuff that's not generic. I want a voice. I want people to tell. I want my pals. I want Scott Oldham. Scott Oldham is a very good writer,
Yeah.
and Scott spent a lot of time running, doing administrative stuff. And now when he's back down, he's writing again. I was just like, holy shit, I forgot Scott can write. and these are, or God knows, you want somebody else, Stephen Cole Smith, who was my boss at Car and Driver and now writes motorsports stuff for Auto Week. I mean, if you want somebody who's going to take you to a dirt track in Florida or so, these, one of the things I really like is reading other people I like, and there are plenty of them out there still worth reading.
Well, and that you bring up when talking about this is exactly why I wanted to write about cars, because there were people that I read and I was like, oh man, like I want to do that. I want to be like that person. Obviously, you have to eventually find your own voice and write your own style, write in your own style. But it is interesting because a lot of these names I get asked, I wouldn't say frequently, but every once in a while I get asked, who do you think is the greatest writer? When people find out I write about cars, they're usually like, whoa, what is the greatest car you've ever driven? And they expect me to say some, like, oh, well, this time I got the LaFerrari to do 4 feet in the air off of a jump. And, they expect me to say stuff like that. But I'm like, that's not so much what I do. I wish. But, and then they always ask me, oh, well, who are the best car writers? And I always say the same thing. I list, of course, Jeremy Clarkson, I think, is a great car writer, depending on what the topic is. And I always say, oh, well, the guys that you usually think of it. And then about 2 or 3 dozen people that you will never, ever hear of unless you are in the world or you obsess over reading the magazine, Mm-hmm. And Sam Smith is a perfect example of that. And I remember I'd been reading Sam Smith for years off and on, and I remember he started doing the racing stuff, especially I would say over the last 5 years maybe, kind of. What'd you say?
Road and Track.
Yeah. And so I texted Jack Baruth. Jack Baruth is kind of like my barometer of, hey, how good is so and so behind the wheel of a car, mm-hmm. And between him and Brian Max, a Canadian journalist and racing driver. And I texted Jack and I said, hey, how good is Sam really in the car? And he's like, mm-hmm. Sam is exceptional. I've seen him beat guys that were actual pro racing drivers in the same car. And I'm like, wow, that's extremely impressive. He's like, no, he's good. And he is a fantastic voice, Yeah. So there's so many great names out there. And again, going back to Car and Driver, there's a creativity level there. There's that off-the-wall creativity that you can have a Car and Driver just with these weird stories. They've been doing it for the life of the magazine. That's what makes them great. That's what made me obsess over him as a kid. And Jared Gall, I think, is hilarious because he's like 7 feet tall. And I love reading his reviews of supercars. And of cars that he shouldn't fit in, mainly because I just know that he's so damn tall. And I'm like, I want to know like how difficult or how easy it was for him,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you say excellent points because you want a list of people. Each person has their own identity for something, and to put that many people in one place is like, if I could go back and be a fly on the wall listening to David E. or literally anybody else over the last 60 years with Car and Driver and just be in the room when they were talking about something or when they were going over ideas with, a glass of bourbon and a cigarette or a cigar in a suit,
I think there's a tendency though to, and I don't mean this to denigrate anybody's memory or anything else like that, but there was David E. and Pat Bedard and everybody else, and Brock Yates, and they're human beings.
Mm-hmm.
They could be assholes at times, and sometimes they make careers out of it. I mean, the thing is that it's kind of hard to remember that we tend to deify people as they
Mm-hmm.
pass, and it's always sad because it is the nature of life. But the thing is that if you do them to what did they have to do that was so difficult to get out what they did? And forget David E as the legend, which I'm sure that how many people know that he's a legend. Don't take it too seriously, because the truth of the matter is he was a guy with a job,
Yeah.
and showed up every day, and he did what he did, and things worked out okay. And there's a certain amount of he wasn't he obviously he was a talented guy, but he wasn't necessarily always nice. He could be a jerk,
Mm-hmm.
and he wasn't always necessarily the guy who was helping things happen. Sometimes he was an impediment to it happening. Which is true of all of us. I don't want to make it sound like I'm being particular to Dave. David. I'm just saying is that we only see the final product,
Right.
as readers and everything else like that, and we don't have an A/B test. We don't the world isn't like, well, if it had been this way, it would have been better, because we can't go back and change the world to see if it would have been better. So it's this is the way it is. You only have the train only goes on one track, and we don't get to see every parallel track it could have gone down. So to a certain extent, having met all these people, having known all the people who I grew up worshiping and everything else like that, it takes the mystery out of it a little bit, and you take away some of the things that you think become less impressive. At the same point in time, some other things become more impressive. And I mean, you want a story? I'll tell you a story.
Yeah, I'd love
First
one.
time I met Don Sherman. He was Don was a big hero of mine. So this is like 1991, and I got the first Firebird Firehawk that SLP was building back then for Carcraft. That's where I get Carcraft. And for the first time, I go out to the Chrysler Proving Grounds, because Don Sherman, who was working for Motor Trend at that point in time, was going to help me, and which was Peterson, the same company, was going to help me test it. So I'm like, oh God, I get to meet Don Sherman. Don Sherman. So I get out to the proving grounds, and Don Sherman pulls up in a Mitsubishi Diamante, a car which no longer exists in any sense. And he pulls up and he slams the door behind him and goes, "I'm Don Sherman. Don is not a man of great stature, and he is a man who kind of waddles when he walks. Nice guy." And Don, by the way, I owe him everything. Is that I realize he turns around and he realizes he just locked the keys to the Diamante inside the car. with the engine running. And he gets in, he gets in there trying to fix the car. He starts pulling the door from the bottom, so he's crouched down to try and figure out some way to get into the car. And his pants go down, and I'm standing at Chrysler, and I'm looking at Don Sherman's butt crack. Excuse me. That kind of put that in perspective for me, is that here's a guy I always wanted to meet, some guy I always wanted to work for, and now I'm staring at his ass. So, these are regular human beings. And, and you don't, a lot of these things are, not people who are, the things that are important to us don't necessarily mean they're going to last forever. I mean, these are, we're a lot of the stuff that we're talking about is not going to be remembered for posterity. It's going to fade and go away from our lives and go away from the culture and the history. They may be stuck in some musty archive, but it's not an archive everybody's going to be looking at a lot.
Right.
And it's stuff to remember that what we're doing for right now is for right now, and the people who are here right now matter a lot, and we don't have to do anything to worry about posterity, and we don't have to do anything to think about building up legends, because what do they say? Someday even Mozart will be forgotten, and
It'd be a sad day.
Yeah, sad day. But it's still, God knows I don't want to be around when Mozart is around. But yeah, at the same point in time, it is what it is. I mean, we are. One of the things I always like to, because Russ, I want these things to be. I don't want what I write to be timeless. I want what I write to be timely, and
Okay.
I want it to be one of those things where, I want to worry about the people who are reading it right now. I don't want to think about what's happening in the future or how people are going to think about it as a legend or anything else, because I don't believe there's going to be a legend about me. I believe I believe in doing my job for where I am at the moment. And, I believe that for my kids, and I believe that for my wife, and I believe that is, to a certain extent, we tend to think about things, and we all do it. I do it myself. I don't want to make it sound like I don't do it, but, we all tend to kind of like think of ourselves as more permanent than we are. And that the stuff we do has weight. And the only weight it has is with the moment we're in. And you might as well appreciate the moment you're in. And I have this all in a 6-volume tape. But it's whatever writing I have, whatever memorableness there is to my writing, it's going to be it's going to be something that is it's going to be slight at best. I mean, I think the piece of writing I'm going to get remembered for most is my 2014 review of a Mitsubishi Mirage, which I dashed off in 45 minutes because the New York Times had a hole to fill, and that's it's going to be like on my it's going to be on my grave in like some sort of like impacted molding thing on my plastic grave thing. But that's it. So I mean, I didn't mean to wander into philosophical territory.
No, you're fine, because honestly, you put a lot of things into perspective. Me being younger and obsessing, I obsess over the olden days that I never got to see or experience or understand, because I was like, man, I want to do that. I want to be there when so and so crashed whatever car, and just sit around and go, so who's calling the car company? It's like all those legendary trips that they made, they had to be annoyed with one another for the week that they were doing those crazy things, and I romanticize it because I'm like, man, I want to be a part of that crowd, because we think of Brock Yates, we think of the movie Cannonball Run, for God's sake, we think of the records that realistically nobody should be doing out on the open road. But we think, oh man, these guys made it. They lived, they survived, and they were friends and drank with professional racing drivers, the Mario Andretti's or, the Phil Hills, whatever. And they hung out with all these people, and it's like, oh my God. But you forget, you're absolutely right. They're normal, everyday people,
They are. They are. I mean, it's just my sister's an actress, and my she's a Tony Award winning actress. I mean, she's not a small, she's had some success, and but what was her career going to be? I don't, whatever her, she can only be herself. She can't be, she can't be Sid Charisse. She can't be, she can't be Katharine Hepburn. She can only be, do the best with the opportunities she gets. And we tend, I can't be David E. Davis. I can't be. All I can be is the opportunities I get and making the most of them. And it's one of those things where, like, I always thought I wanted to be the editor of Motor Trend or the editor of Car and Driver. Well, I don't want to be the editor of either of them, really. So when I was, I always thought that being the editor of Car and Driver would be a really cool thing to be. And as much as I admire the editors of Car and Driver or Motor Trend, and any of them all, because I know Ed Lowe at Motor Trend. I mean, I used to work for Urban Sport Compact Car. Is that it's just a middle management job.
Mm-hmm.
It's a herding cats kind of job. It's the least, to a certain extent, it's the least creative thing you can do. And it's because it's you're blocking the corporates from above from doing it, and you're doing personnel decisions and writing personnel evaluations, all the things that come from being in middle management. And the really good jobs in car writing are things like mine, where when things come up and it's something interesting and you get to do something that nobody else has done, that's the best things. To get back to your original question, what's the best thing to do? The best thing to do is to do stuff that nobody else has done, and you can think it up. You think it up yourself.
Well, and I think one of the best things that you've done that nobody else has done is, and this is something I will always remember about you. If somebody asks me, "Hey, what was John Pearley Huffman like?" and I think the first thing that will come to mind is he had an affinity for the early 2000s Toyota Tundras, like nobody else.
I do. I have a. Well, I bought I came back from the. Now we're going to talk about Tundras, and I'll talk about why I like the Tundra. In 2000, this is May of 1999. I went to the long lead for the then new 2000 Tundra, and I went back to I landed the airplane, and about a week later, I went and I bought the first one out of the Santa Barbara, Toyota Santa Barbara here in town. I bought the very first one they sold, and that green truck. And I've owned other cars. I had a Civic Si. I had other vehicles in between, but I always had the green truck. I always had the green Tundra. And I put 180,000 miles on it. When my son turned 16, I gave it to him. And because it's the right size. I always thought of myself as being a Ferrari or a Porsche guy, but I'm really just kind of like a Tundra guy. And that it's interesting to me is we tend to cars express a certain amount of the type of person we are and the person we choose to be. And I can't. I'm a 15-year-old Tundra, just kind of like knocking around, trying to be having the pretentiousness of trying to be unpretentious, and it's always been a thing. So I gave it to my son. My son, of course, turned left in front of a Honda Fit, and put a small dent in the Tundra and wiped out the Fit. And so he's fixed it. And he's still driving that car. That truck has 200,000 miles on it. But I replaced it. And I was like, what am I going to replace it with? So 2 years ago, I'm going I don't know what I'm looking at Honda Pilots. I'm thinking about buying a new F-150. I'm thinking about all these. I don't like the new Tundras. They're too big. I like the modest Tundra. I like the Tundra that looks like a Camry that exploded into a pickup truck. and so I'm sitting there and I look in Auto Trader, which is I think the way everybody looks at cars now. Is I looked at Auto Trader and I saw this Tundra with 30. At that point in time, it had 44,000 original miles on it. It's a 2006, and it was at a Lexus dealership in Ontario, which is about 200 miles south of me. And I called them up, and we got a bunch of 14 people looking at it. We don't know what's going on. So anyhow, eventually I said, look, okay, I'll buy it. And we did it completely over the internet. And I bought that truck, and they delivered it up to me here in Santa Barbara. And we did all the paperwork in my office. I never had to go to the dealership. It was awesome. So I kept that truck, and I'm very generous with my vehicles. My policy on my vehicles is that if you want to borrow my truck, here's my truck. Because I don't want to be the best thing about a truck is that it has utility to people who don't at all times, and sometimes they need the utility. And I'm not going to be. It's just a truck. Having said that, I love my trucks. So I take the gold truck, and my nephew, who I love and I want everything good for, borrowed it about a month ago. And I took it to L.A. and ran it into a wall and totaled it. And I'm like, oh, jeez, this is awful. This is the end of the world. And my poor truck. And and I'm thinking about all the bad things I don't really want to see happen to my nephew. But it was traumatic. And I thought, what am I going to do next? So I'm thinking, am I going to buy a Colorado or am I going to buy a Sierra? And God knows, I went to Auto Trader and I found another Tundra, 2006 Tundra. This one with 37,000 original miles, and I bought that. And that's so this is my third Tundra, and I'm in a rut. And it's just I like the vehicle because it's very simple. It's the right size. I know they're not going to break. I get my Jones about new cars covered by my work. I don't need to know, I don't need to have and I don't, and it says the right things about me. It says about, the things I want to think of myself as being, which is like unpretentious, easygoing, and all that type of stuff. All the things I like to think of myself as being, but aren't really, because really I'm just an uptight asshole. And, and that was, I think, it's weird because I think we find our spirit animals in cars sometimes.
Yes.
And, if you ask me what my spirit animal was, I would like to think it was a 911 or a F2 or like a 288 GTO. Some of the cars I always loved when I was a kid. And my spirit animal turns out to be a Toyota pickup truck. So, and even though I don't do anything like work, I feel like it's an affront every time somebody uses my truck to like move lawn yard clippings or something else like that. And because, oh my God, you're using my truck as a truck. How dare you? It becomes what we think of. We don't really know what we are until we actually get out in our lives. And what do I do? What do I do with my truck? The only excuse I have for having my truck is that I carry my dogs in it. And I go out, I get my dog Alabama, and Bama's a great dog. It used to be when I was just driving the green truck, and he was young, like he was 1 or 2 years old. He would jump into the bed of the truck, over the tailgate while the tailgate was still up. It was like one of those things where you'd look at it and you just kind of go like, I would own the truck just to watch my dog jump into the back of it. And so that's, and now, the third one now, Bama's 8 years old, and he kind of like, he jumps up, and he missed the other day. He tried to get into the truck, and he fell down, and he fell onto his side on the back. And I thought, oh my dog just killed himself by getting into my truck. He shook it off, and he jumped into the back of the truck.
Poor
and
Bama.
For Bama. And the thing is that when you get right down to it, the thing I would not have anything other than a truck right now, just because the simple fact of it is that I just want to have something to carry my dog in. And one of the great joys of my life is watching my dog jump into the back of my truck. And that's the stupidest reason in the world to own a truck, but that's mine.
No, that's not a stupid reason at all, because every car that I've had has had one of my dogs in it. I had a 2008 Bullitt Mustang. And my mom and dad had a German Shepherd. Now, at one point in time, I lived with my parents to help them take care of my dad's parents and my mom's dad, who all lived in like their guest house and the main house. So I helped them basically manage all these elderly people. And so I had this 2008 Bullitt Mustang. My mom had this German Shepherd who I was extremely close to. I mean, she and I did everything together, right? Everywhere I went, as soon as I opened my car door, she would jump in, and she was in the back seat, everywhere I went. And she died at 2.5 years old of cancer. And
oh, jeez.
Yeah, it was awful. It was brutal. We spent a week with her in the hospital. She was blind, and it was a nightmare. It was terrible. But she was an amazing dog, and she was just so loving and adoring up until the last day, and the last second even. And I refused. I had the Mustang for about a month, and I refused. I didn't open the trunk at all, because in the trunk was a big blanket and some of her toys that because I would lay the back seats down, and I would put the blanket forward for her to have something comfortable to lay on, and I'd have some toys back there for her. And I didn't open up my trunk, and I sold the car. I couldn't do it. I couldn't drive that car anymore, because it was too important. The memories I had, and I was like, I can't have this car with these memories right now, and now I miss it, obviously, because I enjoyed that car a lot, but every one of my cars has an emotional tie for me to one of my animals, one of my dogs. And
yeah, go on.
Oh, it's absolutely, I totally get what you mean, because I love dogs. I have 2 dogs and a cat, and all 3 of our pets are rescue animals that we found, my wife and I, and we love all of them equally, and they all have their own personalities. But it's cars and dogs especially are a beautiful combination, similar to music and cars. You open the door, your dog jumps in, and you go somewhere with your dog, and it's a lasting emotion and relationship you have. So your reasoning for you having the Tundra and Bama and making sure that that's your dog's truck in a sense. Yeah. That's a beautiful thing.
I have 2 dogs, and I have to disagree with you to this extent. I like Bama a lot more than I like my other dog. Bama, we got Bama. When we chose Bama, we think he's half husky and half Malamute because he's really big. Mm-hmm. So but he's more athletic than a Malamute, which tends to be kind of bottom heavy. So we think he looks like, we bought him. We thought he was a Siberian Husky until he turned out to be twice the size of a Siberian Husky. But anyhow, when we were looking at the puppies in his litter, I said, let's just take the one that looks mellowest, and that was Bama. And so we took Bama home, and his name is Alabama, but everybody calls him Bama, obviously. And Bama was always just a total sweetheart, and the most loving, easygoing dog in the world. And another family took another dog out of the litter, and they named it Duke. And they were up the street from us, so my wife would arrange play dates between the 2 dogs. And Duke was psychotic. And Duke would kill their chickens and do all that stuff that you think that, Duke was just insane. And of course, so more and more time, Duke was spending more and more time at our house. Eventually, Duke became our dog. I don't like Duke very much. Duke is kind of a jerk, and and I wouldn't have named him Duke, because it's just a name that I hate for dogs because everybody names their dog Duke. But Alabama's a great name for a dog, by the way. Duke is just there, and he hurt his leg, and he can't really move very much, and he just hangs around, and he just growls at you, trying to take away any of his toys, and he's always begging for food, and everybody says, I love all my animals equally, and you may well, but I love Bama a lot more than I love Duke, because I can't say this about my kids, I can't say or Jack. That would be really harsh. I can say this about my dogs. I love Alabama. Duke I barely tolerate. And we also have a cat named Twiggy, who I think is just like the biggest, dopiest, stupidest cat in the history of mankind. She's about the size of my fist. And I just think she might as well not be there. She might as well be a hamster. So, when it comes right down to it, we have 3 animals, of which one I love, and one of which I kind of am scared of and kind of despise, which is Duke, and Twiggy, which someday I know I'm going to step on and kill. So, essentially. So animals are an interesting topic in the way we relate to them. I did a story on for Car and Driver called "Why Dogs Love Cars," and dogs really do love cars. Dogs are excited to be in a car. They're ready for the adventure of what might happen next, and they love sucking in the world as it comes to them. There might be another dog. They may get to meet another dog. I mean, this is all the stuff that they really get excited about. And I definitely suggest everybody who owns a vehicle of any sort ought to have a dog to go with it. I don't mean like in the art of racing in the rain type of stuff either, but because they're dogs, not because they have some sort of insight into the world or they're magical and mystical or anything else like that. Just because it's nice to have something around that is just kind of like you're a companion who isn't going to get mad at you when you say something stupid, because I'm going to be saying some stupid things, and I want somebody around who's just not going to change their opinion of me because of it.
It's funny you say that, because I couldn't agree more, and I 100% believe that no matter what your day is, good, bad, indifferent, just waking up, going to sleep, whatever it is, going to the bathroom, doesn't matter. Your dog is always there with you, and it's those moments where it's just when life isn't going your way, your dog is there and wants to go your way. And wherever you're going, they want to go. When life is totally amazing and going your way, your dog is there, wanting to be in the picture. And I love our cat because our cat thinks that she's a dog. So she does everything that our dogs do pretty much, except walk on a leash. We've tried, she just doesn't enjoy it. But she does go out in our yard and she pees and poops with the dogs in the yard.
Well, there's something to be appreciated for a cat that doesn't pee or poop inside. So, cats are different. I've had cats, and I've had cats I really loved. My cat Gage was just this great cat. And we had a cat. We had cats. We had two cats. We had basically at the same time. We had one named Gage and one named DeSoto, named after the paramedics on Emergency, which is a show from the 1970s. And my dream was when I had two dogs, I always wanted to have this is going to be really old. This is old guy stuff that you aren't going to get because you were born in like 1987.
86.
I don't know where
close.
Yeah. So I had my dog. I always wanted to have two dogs. I wanted to name them Reed Malloy after the two cops on Adam 12. Just because what I really wanted to do is there was always a scene in Adam 12 where Sergeant McDonald, their boss, would go, "Reed, boy!" And the two cops would come up to them, and I always wanted to be able to go, "Reed, boy!" and have my dogs come up to me. That's the way I think in the world. And so some point, but anyhow, our cats were named Gage and DeSoto after the paramedics on Emergency, and because my wife was the president of the Randy Mantooth fan club when she was a kid, when Randy Mantooth Gage on Emergency. And the thing is always weird is Randy Mantooth, who went to the same high school I went to, now lives about 4 blocks from us here in Santa Barbara. So it's like, and my wife grew up in Gulf Shores, Alabama. So the world works in mysterious ways. And the reason why my dog's name is Alabama is because that's my wife's, that's my wife's heritage. She's from Alabama.
Oh.
And Alabama is just a great name for a dog. I suggest that people always think about if they're going to be naming their dogs, name them after a really good football team.
So my dogs and my cat, our oldest dog is half Siberian Husky, half Jack Russell Terrier. Very,
oh my God.
Yeah, right? Very odd combination. But she's about 50 pounds, and her name is Luna. She's 6. Our other dog is a Border Collie named Carlin, after George Carlin, my favorite comedian.
Good name for a dog.
I agree. Even though it's a female dog, and George Carlin is a man, but that's okay. It's okay. And then our cat is named Ollie, Oly, after Olympic weightlifting because of my wife. I named her that. Well, actually, I didn't name her that. A friend of ours said you should call her Ollie because of your affinity for Olympic weightlifting. That's what they said.
Great names.
Interesting names. Yeah, I mean, Luna is Moon, obviously. Right. My mom is very Catholic, so she names all of her dogs Mary something.
That's
so the dog the German Shepherd that we had that passed away at 2.5, her name was Mary Grace, and her two current dogs right now are sisters from the same litter named Mary Catherine and Mary Elizabeth.
Running a convent for dogs.
Yes, literally 100%. It's just a giant convent of German Shepherds. That's all.
Yeah.
So kind of getting back to some other car stuff. I have an interesting question for you because and actually first off, before that, one of my favorite pictures I think you've ever posted on social media, if I recall correctly, it was Bama laying in it was like a brown recliner chair.
Yeah.
And this is a number of years ago.
Yeah. He still has the chair. He still has it.
It's one of my favorite pictures because his head is like hanging over the armrest. Very adorable. But one of the questions I have for you is that you told me that in July of 93, talking to a GM engineer about the next Corvette, which would be the C5 Corvette at that time, you accidentally guessed basically how the car would be laid out. How the hell did you really do that? I mean, I understand now we look back and go, oh, that was a logical decision. But at the time, how logical was it really to think that way?
Well, here's things. Everybody seems to forget that at that time, General Motors owned Lotus.
Mm-hmm.
And Lotus built all its cars almost exactly the same way. I mean, like the Elan and the Elite. All of you look at them. Basically what they did was they engineered the DeLorean the same way too. Which is this: you build a backbone. That's you have a strong center console, center section of the frame going back, and then you have a Y at the back, and either you insert the engine back there if it's a mid-engine car, or you would put in the suspension back there if it's a front-engine car. And I thought, the logic, it's a very efficient way because it's a very lightweight way of building a car. And I thought, if you look at the way Lotus builds cars, and you look about what's coming up with the Corvette, and the Corvette is basically the next Corvette that's coming. Remember, they both until the C8, all Corvettes were built essentially the same way, including the C5, which is a modified version of this. But all Corvettes were built off of a ladder frame.
Mm-hmm.
So you had frame rails on either side, and then you had supports in between. You put the engine in there. Very simple. The way they built it's the same way they built the Model T, and they built every car up until then. And I thought to myself, what you really need to do is and I thought that the basic thing would be to basically just kind of come up with use a backbone frame because it's lighter weight. And if you're going to do that, you're going to end up with a space at the back. So you might as well move the transmission to the back because that was like a 928. And I guessed it. I just said, I think that's the way you guys should build the next car. And he said, how did you know that's what we were doing? And this is 1993. So this is like before the car came out. And he just handed me essentially he handed me the C5 on a platter. So I called up Jeff Carr, who was the editor of Motor Trend at that time, who I knew. I said, look, I can write you a story on what the next Corvette is and be accurate. And he goes, well, when can you have it? I said, I'll have it for you tomorrow morning. And I wrote it that night. And I didn't have my name on it because I didn't want to have any way of tracing it back to the GM engineer who was there and who told me it. And but that's how that's the first thing I wrote for Motor Trend, and the first thing I wrote in the New Car magazine was I told the world what the C5 Corvette was going to be. So. And
once you drove the C5 Corvette, did you like it?
I like the C5 Corvette quite a bit. I think the interior is an atrocious pile of crap, but the car, and if you have guys right now who are going like Gymkhana courses or Ultimate Streetcar competitions and everything else, the C5 is hugely popular with them.
Mm-hmm.
Incredibly cheap. You can buy a C5 for like $5,000. It's rebuildable,
mm-hmm.
which for a race car is fine because that's all you're gonna do is rebuild it into a race car anyhow. And the C5s are cheap. They're really robust. You can ram them into walls and they won't total out like my Tundra. And they're cool because they're also the last Corvette with hidden headlights, which I still think is something they ought to bring back because I think hidden headlights were cool. And I like the C5 quite a bit. And I think the LS1, which was the first 5.7 liter LS engine in there, is really the LS is a wonderful engine, and I just think that the LS1 was the great start to it. So yeah, I think the C5 was great, but that's how I got into the new car books, is because I was actually smart enough to make a wild ass guess and be right, and happened to be next to a GM engineer while I was doing it, the right GM engineer.
Yeah, the right person who was like, wait, what? How'd you know? Instead of playing dumb.
Yeah, instead of playing dumb, but it was a wild ass guess. It wasn't, I thought if you look at the logic of it, it's kind of self-apparent now,
right? Because
that's how 5, C6, and C7. But but back then it was, who knew what was going to be? Remember the C4 in 1993? The C4 had already been around for like 10 years,
right? So,
it was getting pretty long in tooth. And but I'm very proud about that guess, which basically built my career.
It was great.
One stupid.
It was such a great guess. It's hilarious.
Yeah. But it's true. I mean, I wish I could say I guessed a lot. A lot of these things that are carded was pretty straightforward to predict. But that one was that was a pretty big leap to go for the transaxle and the frame. And if you look at it. And and remember, it's not the C5 isn't a purely Lotus frame, because it has side rails, which Lotus often didn't use. Lotuses are really flimsy cars,
mm-hmm.
and Corvette was more robust than that. But it made a certain amount. It made a certain amount of sense. And also remember that Lotus had done the engineering work on the LT5, the 4-cam engine
Right.
that went into the Corvette and the ZR1,
Well,
which is one of those. Yeah, go on. I'm sorry. Which is one of those cars that I really like too. I really of cars. If I wanted to have a car in my dream garage, which means I'll never have it because I don't want to actually have to maintain it or anything else like that, is that I would love to have a C4 Corvette in it, a C4 ZR1 Corvette, which I think is really just a great car.
It's funny, because we talk about Lotus and GM owning Lotus at that time, and with the C5 and then the C4 ZR1, and the engine that they actually did for them, and also Lotus handled the suspension. They created the Magna-Ride suspension for General Motors, and now it's talked about as it does make me laugh when I listen to especially my dad, who's a big GM guy. Loves Corvettes, has had every Corvette underneath the sun, has a C8 coming to him at some point now. And I do chuckle because for years he would talk about, General Motors with the advancement in magnetic ride, with their engineering ingenuity. No other company could do this. And I was like, they didn't even do it. It was Lotus. What the hell are you talking about? So we used to get in fights about that.
Lotus was actually very valuable. I think selling Lotus was a mistake for GM. But then again,
I agree.
If they'd held on to Lotus and then they went through the bankruptcy, Lotus would be dead now instead of the barely surviving on the respirator thing it is today.
Yeah.
So, there's good and bad with it, but GM is very capable of doing things that are surprisingly good. I mean, what they did do is by themselves was the LS series of V8 engines, which are, because they're pushrod engines, people tend to dismiss as being primitive in some way or another. They're incredibly compact. They make an amazing amount of power for their size. They don't weigh very much, and they're brutally. I mean, they're just robust. They don't break.
Right.
So, when you think about it, it's GM is capable of really great things when they put their minds to it. So is Ford, and maybe Chrysler too. So. We tend to, we go through the current crisis right now, what's going on with Ford and GM and all trying to build respirators or anything else like that. These guys, the one thing you do is when you meet all the people, is these companies are, no matter what their bureaucracies, no matter what is holding them back or whatever else, it's filled with really smart engineers who, given the freedom, can really achieve something great. And you take a look at the C8 Corvette. The C8 Corvette is it's essentially a Lamborghini for 1/5 the price.
Right.
And when you get right down to it, the only company that could do that was the only two companies. There are only two companies that could do that, and that's GM and Ford.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and Ford decided to build the GT, which is a $400,000 machine. But Ford, if it wanted to, it could build a $60,000 sports car just the same way that GM had.
Well, and okay. Oh, I was just gonna say. I mean, if you look at what they did with I think they thought outside the box when they created the GT350 when they redid it. Now, granted, I'm biased because I have a 2017 GT350 as my daily, and I feel as though that car is radically different from what General Motors were doing with the Camaro, especially with the ZL1 and stuff like that. But having driven all the Corvettes, all the Camaros, all that stuff, the reason why I went to the GT350 was I just couldn't find personally for me another car at $60,000 that felt the way it did for my personality, for my personal, what I wanted to drive every day,
Well, the big thing, it's interesting is that we talk about Camaro development and Mustang development, and I always think that Ford starts with the base Mustang and then builds its performance version.
Yes.
And then what happens with GM is GM starts with like a ZL1 and then builds the cheaper versions down from there.
Right.
And it's very much reflects a cultural thing. And I think the major problem GM did with the latest Camaro, which works wonderfully. I mean, it's just a wonderful car to drive.
Mm-hmm.
Is they made a couple mistakes. One, they made it look like a '69 Camaro again.
Right.
And then they also you can't see out of the damn thing.
Right.
Which is which is a major difference. But because Ford started off with the base car, they said, well, we got to make sure that, you know, for the use, God knows, I'll say something like for the women who drive, which is going to just get me in so much trouble. So I didn't say that. But because it's got to be something that people want to drive every day, and we're going to sell a lot of these with 4-cylinder and 6-cylinder engines. It's got to be something that that anybody can get into and not feel intimidated by and be able to see out of. It's a better car as a GT350. And the other thing about the GT350 is that look, in the history of mankind, there are certain great ideas. Democracy. There are the idea of the individuality of and reason for the individual, the dignity of the individual, and of course the flat plane crank. And that car, if nothing else, sounds spectacular, doesn't it?
Oh,
and don't
yeah.
you just want to get in that car and like every day drive it and feel like the guy going like, there's some guy at Ford who said to themselves like, let's go to flat plane crank of this bitch and really make it sound bitchy. And somebody else at Ford going, no, we can't do that. Come on, that's not. And then somebody says, well, let's give it a try. Okay, let's give it a try. And somebody there said, mocked at the crank, and they generated out the thing. They got out there, and some guys out at Ford said, we're sitting there on the test track going, why are we wasting all this money on this engine? This is just. And then it came roaring by, and they go like, holy shit, let's do that. That sounds bitchin'.
Right.
And that car gets bought by people who never heard the term flat plane crank and now worship at the church of flat plane crank because it sounds so wicked cool, and at the same point in time, it's a very usable car every day.
So 13 and a half cubic feet of trunk space is 0.4 larger than an E-Class sedan. It's a 13.1 cubic foot trunk. And so I had this argument but a conversation with my buddy Tom. My buddy Tom has a ton of money. At one point in time, he had a 458 Italia. He just sold his Lamborghini Huracan. He now has to have the exotics because it's like for him, nothing else really matters because he's seen the top of the hill. He wants the top every time. And I told him that he was not man enough to go buy a GT350 or a GT500 and enjoy the hell out of it. And he said, why would I do that? I don't like Mustangs. And I said, these aren't Mustangs. These aren't what you would normally think of. And I said, the thing is, at some point in driving your Ferrari or your Lamborghini or your high-end exotic that you have, you're going to feel stupid. Because it's going to make you feel like you're not good enough behind the wheel of it. And I said, every day I drive my GT350, whether it's rain or shine, hot or cold, I feel like a hero just starting it up and going through the gears myself. Mm-hmm. It makes me feel good, and it makes me feel like I have so much control. And it's, let's be real here. It is faster than what anybody feasibly needs on a daily basis.
It is much faster.
Right. And it sounds, like you said, it sounds bitchin'. I mean, it sounds like the 60s all over again.
No, it doesn't. It sounds better than the 60s. But you weren't there, but, I'm just old enough to have spent some time in the 60s. Is that, the 60s, the cars... Muscle cars suck. They're piles of crap.
They were turds.
Really turds. They're not that fast. They're loud, but they didn't make it sound that good. What it sounds like is a 3.5. It sounds like it's a 355, Ferrari 355.
Oh yeah.
Which was also a flat plane crank car, or it sounds like an Indy car, which was the V8 Indy cars from the they were turbocharged, but from the 90s, which I thought were always bitching. These are all these are 9,000 RPM cars that Pontiac 455 is it produces peak torque at 2 RPM and then falls off from there. And you don't want that. The GT350 engine, it's called Voodoo if I remember correctly.
Yes, it is.
Is far better than anything they produced in the 1960s. So much better than they produced. Having said that, I wish it looked like a 1969 Boss 302.
Oh, that would be great.
Yeah, but at the same point in time, we tend to, I always look at, every time I look at these 1960s muscle cars, and it's just, they're appalling garbage. I mean, they have panel gaps that are so wildly inconsistent. They have paint that's blotchy if it's original paint at all. They creak every time you open a door. The seats are terrible. The reason why, if you take somebody like Mark Stilo, who is another GM engineer and not the guy who told me about the Corvette. Mark builds 69 Camaros in his spare time. He builds great 69 Camaros, fantastic cars. They perform like Ferraris, and the reason why he can do that is because there's so much to fix in a 69 Camaro that he can then fix it. That he can do that, but stock. Oh my God, they're terrible. They're just terrible cars. And people worship them like, are you insane? These are. This is my. I'm going to go on a diatribe here because I don't have anything else better to do at the moment. Is that the 1960s, which people and I'm a victim of this because I collect Hot Wheels because I've been collecting Hot Wheels since I was 6 years old because I was a victim of this. The thing that we forget about muscle cars is they're really marketing exercises. This is the 1960s is when the companies realized that the large cohort of population, the baby boomers going through the 60s, who needed to want cars, and they had to appeal to young people, and they didn't want to spend any money building actually good cars, so they put paint type stripes on their whatever they have, or they came up with a Mustang, which is basically a Falcon, and they did whatever they could to get people excited about cars that were very ordinary. And in some ways, they put big engines, which are still the big, dumb, stupid engines they were putting in their full-size cars, into smaller cars to create these muscle cars. But the marketing was intense. The marketing was insane. It was on TV all the time. It was on all these great ads came out in the magazines and the newspapers. It was all aimed at youth, at the young people. And these are the people who are buying them now, which have kept the prices up. But this is a lot. Baby boomers suck, and I'm kind of like a tail end baby. And the thing is that here I was 6 years old, 7 years old. I was looking at all this advertising. I was looking at all this marketing, and that sucked me into the car world. And that sucked me, especially when Mattel came out with Hot Wheels in '68. And I was right there. I was prime marketing age for Hot Wheels, and Mattel just completely hooked me, totally hooked me. And I'm looking at my 4,000 Hot Wheels sitting in the corner over here, and in a bunch of buckets and boxes and everything else like that. And and the reason is Hot Wheels led to Carcraft, which led to Car and Driver, which led to me being here talking to you. And it's the marketing, but it's the marketing. It's that made muscle cars what they are, and we're still subject to it. And we tend to think that the automotive culture is something that's spontaneous or rises, everything else like that. This is a big business, and the big business is in selling cars. And that the business of selling cars, in a large part, determines how the culture exists.
So your point leads me to a question that I've given to everybody that's so far done the podcast. And
okay.
The question is, what worries you most about this crisis regarding the automotive industry?
Worries me most. First of all, I'm not that worried about the automotive industry. I think the interesting thing about this crisis is, if there's anything this crisis does, it makes public transportation look pretty stupid. Because the reason why New York is so affected is because they stack people up and they put them in subway cars. And I think having a 3,000-pound isolation chamber looks pretty good right about now. I think I think relatively speaking, people want cars, and I think they're going to come back to cars. I don't think they're going to, whether they're electric powered or anything else like that. I don't know what they're going to be in the future as far as technology goes. I think there's going to be a large mix of them, and I don't think internal combustion is going away tomorrow. Having said that, is that I think that the big challenge right now is that people are going to like the way they're buying cars now. There are not very many people. Lincoln I'm writing a story, literally writing this story right now. Lincoln has an ad out right now about buying your car remotely and having it delivered to you.
Mm-hmm.
and they're going to postpone the payments for 3 or 4 months. I don't remember it here, so you don't have to make your first payment till July. And relatively speaking, that's a lot better. In the last two, when I bought my Tundra, I didn't have to go into a dealership. And I think the big thing that's coming right now is I think people are going to try and figure out, how do I not go into a dealership to buy this car? How do customers take control of the situation by sitting at their computers and buying their cars virtually and never having to be in an F&I guy's office being pressured by formats and the crew code? And I think that this crisis that we're going through right now is really going to change a lot of the ways that people expect to do all sorts of commerce in the United States, all sorts of commerce in the rest of the world, the whole world, which is like, why am I going to stores to buy this when I can have it delivered to me? And I think that's going to affect the car business as much as it's going to, maybe even more so than a lot of other businesses. So, I'm not worried about the car business.
You said something so in 2007, at the tail end of 2007 is when I sold cars, right? And so I saw the writing on the wall with regards to what we were doing, selling cars, where we were, my manager had a friend who was a manager of Wachovia at the time, before it was Wells Fargo. And he would call him up and say, hey, this person has terrible credit. They can't buy a car, but I want you to buy them anyway, because that way we can repossess the car in a month or two. And so I saw that, firsthand, and I was like, this is crazy stuff. And so then I basically, everybody chuckled at me. They thought I was crazy, because I said, look, in 10 years, 10, 15 years, we're going to be buying cars online. People are going to be having cars delivered to their houses, not because they called on a phone, but because they have an internet connection and they're going on Amazon, And I got laughed at by everybody. Everybody thought I was a total idiot, for saying that. But I'm like, it's happening. It's going to happen. You guys are terrible human beings. People think that. They're afraid of you. They don't trust you. So why would they come in here to talk to you if they don't have to?
Well, the thing is, I don't mean to interrupt, Josh. But
no, you're fine.
Anyhow, this is already happening in used cars. It's going to happen in used cars first. Remember, the used cars market is vastly larger than the new car market. Mm-hmm. Even though the car market is still we're still at 7. I don't know what we're going to be this year. We're going to probably do 13 million units, but it's still 17 million units until this thing happens. Is that why would you start your search for a new car any place except Auto Trader?
Right.
I mean, used car. I mean, the used car market is, everything else. You're gonna have a link to a Carfax report. There's going to be photos there, and you don't have to go driving around looking for what you want. You don't have to make phone calls. You don't have to deal with people. And we already have things like Carvana and all these other things coming up. I mean, the used car market is going to be essentially, as far as I can tell, and I will. You can ask somebody. You can ask a bunch of other people, like Steve over whose last name I'm going to remember.
Stephen Lang.
Yeah, Stephen Lang. You got Steve. Steve, and God knows Steve is such a used car dealer. And but the truth of the matter is that for most people who are trying to buy quality used cars, as opposed to people who are credit challenged and have to buy a $1,000 beater. Mm-hmm. The used cars are going to be completely an online experience for most people most of the time. But I think it is now. I think it has been for me for the last two. The last two Tundras I bought, were both used. And the Tundra, the Tundra I bought, the black one I have now, I found in Ontario, ironically the same place the green gold one came from. And but it was owned by a teacher who had it in storage for 8 years. And and which I thought was a miracle that I found this thing. But I never dealt with a dealer. I never dealt except for Steve, who I asked advice on. And it was never a dealership experience. I mean, why would I go through? I found it on Auto Trader, and Auto Trader lets you search by the terms that you matter. I searched for 2000 to 2006 Tundras, and I searched by lowest mileage first.
Right.
And And this one came. There's one on Auto Trader right now that only has 20,000 miles on it. And it's 2,000 miles away from my house. This one was only like 180 miles away from my house. And used car market is going to determine where the new car market goes. Everybody starts off as a used car buyer in the market. Virtually everybody starts off as a used car buyer.
Mm-hmm.
And experience is going to be, as the generations go on, is people are going to start off as buying things online. They're going to get used to buying things online. And dealerships aren't going to have any choice but to be on, and they already are. Dealerships, the one thing you find out about car dealers is they may be evil and they may be scummy, but they're not stupid.
No.
And they're going to go wherever they can find buyers. And the buyers right now are sitting at computers. They're not wandering from lot to lot, stumbling into being pressured into buying a Dodge Daytona. So, that's I think it's the big thing that's coming out of this. Everybody is sitting, I think everybody's who I know, it's maybe true in North Carolina, I don't know, I'm sure it's everybody I know is saying to themselves, who are the people who are the heroes out of this? And who are the people? Amazon guys, the Amazon delivery guys, the FedEx guys,
right.
The guys who at Walmart, the truck drivers who are getting everything there. Nobody's saying to themselves, you know what I really miss is the retail experience. Nobody misses the retail experience. Everybody wants to be wants stuff that's going to get delivered to them. It's going to be easy for them, and that they don't have to, and that they can keep their thing down. But there's going to be a lot of things that are coming. I wrote a story. There's an economist at George Mason University who basically said for a lot of people, his name is Tyler Hardin. I can't remember his name is, but he wrote a story on. And this is at ride.tech. If you just buy my stories at ride.tech about this. So please read it. But the thing is that he said that for a lot of people, this is World War II. This is going to be a formative experience. This is going to change a lot of the way they see the world, mm-hmm. especially for my kids who are 17 and 18 years old, or 18 and 19, whatever they are at the moment, 17 and 19. And this is going to be they're not going to see the world as a. They're not going to see car dealers or supermarkets or anything else the same way anymore. Or even restaurants. I mean, this is going to be very much where I don't think restaurants are going to disappear, but it's very much going to be a takeout culture. It's more and more going to be a takeout culture than it has been until now. And I think people are going to like the takeout culture. I think the thing is that, and I think the takeout culture that comes with car buying is going to be something people actually like. And I don't think people have I don't think people are going to put up with this bullshit anymore. They don't have to. So, I can buy a Toyota Tundra out of a Lexus dealer 200 miles away. Never go to the Lexus dealer. Have the guys drive it up to me. Sign all the paperwork in my office, and then he takes an Uber back to Ontario. That's exactly what happened for me, and I know that that's what's happening for a lot of people right now. And I know a lot of people are like Lincoln, are recognizing the change, and they have to push the car because they can't have people going into the showroom. They're saying, like, look, call us, take a look at our website, buy it online, we'll drive the car up to you and deliver it to you. That's an amazing change.
It is. And I've been saying lately that the two things that I thought would be very important are going to be, I felt as though the classic car market would be very interesting because there's going to be a lot of classic cars that I feel like have very superficial values are going to either fall through the floor or rise exponentially depending on the car it is. Because, some of these cars, they were made in the tens to hundreds of thousands to millions of cars, but they're astronomically priced for no reason whatsoever,
1969 Trans Am.
So my dad had a 1969 Trans Am clone, and he made that clone, and it's probably worth $70,000 just as a clone, which is crazy.
They made 80,000 or something Trans Ams in 1979, and people are paying money for those.
Right.
77 to 70. It's like, they're slow, they're garbage, they're great looking, and that market. The big change in the classic car market that I see is, I think bring-in trailers become the classic car market.
Yes.
Or it's becoming the.
It's the online Barrett Jackson is what I call it.
Yeah, but Barrett Jackson, Barrett Jackson's for people who want to show off in Hawaiian shirts and big watches,
Right. Yeah.
and this is not Barrett Jackson. Bring a trailer is, bring a trailer. It's weird that you have like, you know that I'm a Facebook enthusiast
Yes.
because I'm an old guy, and therefore I like Facebook in my AOL email address. And the thing is what you find out is that you can share a lot more community with like-minded people by saying like, look at what I saw on Bring a Trailer,
Right.
and sharing it on Facebook, Twitter, and everything else. Than you can if you show up amongst the big crowd at Barrett Jackson, in which 80% of the people are just morons with money.
Yep.
And you can you can go there and have more. You have more connection through with the online thing than you ever did in real life. At some level, for things that are, you can't hit critical mass. You can't hit critical mass the same on things on a subject like classic cars or old cars or stupid cars or all the things I love. You can't hit the same critical mass that you can online. You can't do that in real life as easily. You can't find enough like-minded souls unless you have the chance to share it online.
Absolutely.
Because I'm not going to go. I can't go down to the coffee shop and expect everybody in the coffee shop is going to care about the 1980 Chrysler New Yorker ad I just posted.
Right.
But at the same point in time, I can put it online, and I have almost 4,000 friends on Facebook, and I know that 40 or 50 of them are going to like it, and about 10 of them are going to say something.
Right.
And that's this is going to change the nature of. There's good and bad about how the world has changed. I mean, sharing something as benign as automotive enthusiasm is great. It's wonderful. It's the thing I love most about Facebook. But I'll also stupidly argue politics with people who shouldn't be arguing politics. But it also enables people who do dangerous things to hook up. I don't think pedophiles should be allowed to know any other pedophile.
Yes.
And
Right.
so it's two things. Is it can normalize really bad behavior, which is bad, but it can also really exaggerate and increase the effective reach of sharing enthusiasm, which I think is great in everything. I mean, go on.
I was just gonna say that I think that's what social media should. I think the original plan for most people getting on social media has always been, like I just want to be with like-minded people. It's better than being in a room filled with people because now you can have more people in the conversation, and you don't have to have social anxiety.
Well, I have social anxiety and everything. I don't know. Have you ever stood up at the urinal and you have performance anxiety about how you're going to pee?
It's the worst.
Yeah, the guy next to you is like, he's like pushing out a fire hose full of pee.
And you got a trickle. You're like,
Got a little performing here.
Yeah.
And everything is that way. But it's cost me to a certain extent. I've had people I should never get into. I was a poli-sci major, and I love politics. I love thinking about principles and political principles. I love thinking about. I love reading about it. I love doing all that sorts of things. And I was better off when I didn't know some of my friends' political leanings. It's just that I really didn't need to know that some people were so opposed to me that they would hate me over not hating other people enough.
Right.
It's two-way street on these sorts. As all things in life are, there are trade-offs for everything. And I would still have some friends if I didn't know their politics, and I kind of resent that, and I kind of hate the fact that I've learned those things. And at the same point in time, I wouldn't have anywhere near as many friends if I didn't share the fact that I love stupid things about cars.
Right.
So it's different. It goes on. We've been talking for almost 2 hours, dude.
I know.
I told you this would be.
It's okay. Look, I don't mind because I can do parts 2, 3, 4, 6, 9, 15. We could do, I could have 10 different, parts to this podcast if I really wanted to. I don't care. Doesn't bother me.
All Pearley.
Yeah,
because,
all Pearley.
might be like one person. I think my mother might listen to this. So
She'll learn something new about you.
yeah, she will. But at some point in time, I need to go back to work.
Yeah, I was gonna say I literally just had one other question, and that was, or actually two other questions, and that was about it. So
Okay, go on. Go on.
last, or one of the last questions is, how do you feel about the state of the manual gearbox in new cars?
It's doomed.
Don't break my heart. Don't hurt me like that.
Look, they're not going to sell any GT350s with an automatic, except that the 10-speed automatic in the Ford GM developed is brilliant. So, would you throw away that GT350 of yours if it had the 10-speed automatic, which is such a good transmission?
Yes, I would. I would not have bought my GT350 if it had an automatic. That's true.
Okay.
I'm a dick. I'm a dick when it comes to so the first manual I ever had was a 2006 Mazda Speed 6, and I bought it at the end of 2006 going into 2007, and I've not owned an automatic gearbox car since.
You're a purist.
Very.
But I mean, there are certain cars that I hope never have an automatic transmission. I've owned two Honda Civic SIs, and you can't buy an SI with an automatic transmission.
Right.
Okay. And I think the Civic SI, I think it continues to be one of the very best deals you could possibly get.
Oh, yes. Car. Yes.
Civic SI. Which is, it's not incredibly fast, but it's fast enough. And it handles well enough, and it's a lot of fun to drive, and it only costs $24,000.
And it's cheap to insure and cheap to put gas in.
Yeah. And it's got the best thing about manual transmissions is there are very few car thieves who know how to drive a manual.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah. But certain cars demand a manual transmission because they are full immersion automobiles. I just had I was just driving because this is going to sound like a bragging but it's true. I just had a couple of McLarens and a 911 Turbo S and a Taycan Turbo S, and and the thing is that I think the Taycan you can't have a manual transmission because there really is no transmission. There's a single gear lower things.
Right.
The McLarens don't even have a park on their don't even have P on their automatic transmissions. But I don't know if it would be any better because they're pretty good automated manual. And the 911 Turbo S with their new 8-speed is pretty good with an automatic. Having said that, I'm getting a regular 911 Cabriolet here pretty quick, and I think it's going to be a manual, and I really look forward to trying it back to back. I don't think the GT350 would be any better with a manual. I don't think a ZL1 would be any worse is any worse with an automatic. I don't think the GT500 would be any better with a manual. It's just it's just too much of a torque monster for the manual to actually matter that much. And the thing it takes for a manual I think buying a Miata with an automatic track transmission ought to be illegal.
Yes.
But at the same point in time, I think that you take a look at the cars that need and I think it's a shame that Ferrari doesn't sell a manual transmission.
As do I.
I think that manual transmissions are best with engines that are high revving, that aren't necessarily thick with torque down low, that really invite you to really get the most out of the car by controlling the engine revs. And that's pretty simple. I don't think you take the difference between the GT350 and the GT500. The GT500 is a beast. It's just a stupidly overpowered car, and that it has an automatic transmission. I think it's the 10-speed. I don't remember. I haven't driven that car yet, but I've driven other GT500s. It doesn't get any better with a manual transmission, just because it's not really a real car. It's an exhibition. It's like the Hellcat. The Hellcat is better with an automatic than with a manual, because it just is, because you can't really do anything with that car except show off. The GT350, you really get something out of it. With a manual transmission. The next Civic Si really gets something out of it with a manual transmission. The Miata, you get something out of it with a manual transmission. But a 911, I hope you still get something out of it with a manual transmission. The new 911, I've only driven things. But
I hope so.
I'm not going to be too. But at the same point in time, these are very specialized products. I mean, we're talking, what do they sell, like 4,000 GT350s a year?
About that,
And
yeah, 3 or 4,000, something like that.
they sell maybe a handful of SIs, and they sell, 30,000 Miatas, and I think half the Miatas still go out with automatics. So, I mean, I think to a certain extent you have to appreciate them for what they are, which is, a very particular market for very particular people. I don't want my Tundra with a manual transmission. I want my Tundra with an automatic.
Yeah,
It's a
right.
truck. It's I think the manual transmission is going to survive, but in an ever narrower channel, very small. And I don't really think that's all that bad. One of the cars I really think is underrated is the regular Mustang GT with a manual transmission. It's pretty wonderful. But you know what? Regular Mustang GT with a 10-speed automatic is pretty wonderful too.
So I actually had, before I had this GT350, I had a 2015 Mustang GT, performance pack, leather Recaros, navigation. It was in guard green, and I sold it to my brother to get the GT350. He sold it to a family friend of ours. The family friend was just wrecked it. Somebody ran a red light as he was going through it and hit him, almost T-boned him. It was just in front of the door, totaled the car, but he and his girlfriend were in the car, no problems. He had a burn mark on his wrist from the airbag, and that was it. That was it.
Good for him.
Yeah, and the car that hit him, he was going 60. The car that hit him was going 60. And
wow, he's like
extremely lucky, right? But yeah, so to think, I mean, the engineering is great. That car had a manual. It's an amazing car. I miss it. I hate that it's wrecked. But the last question I have for you, because continuing on with new cars, and you drive everything under the sun, from cheap to expensive. What is a modern car feature that you hate that you love, and what are some that you love to hate?
Okay. I hate automatics. I hate and love to hate the fact that the automatic stop starts on cars. I hate that with a passion. I think it drives me nuts when you come up to a stop sign, you stop and the engine shuts down, because and oftentimes it also shuts off the power steering, which just drives me up the wall. I just hate that in a car. I thought I was going to hate automatic doors in minivans until I had kids, and now I think automatic tailgates and the power tailgates, power sliding doors are the greatest gift to families since the Immaculate Conception 2,000 years ago. They are, when my kids were born, we bought a Sienna, and my wife and I were sitting there and we're discussing whether or not to get the low end model with manual doors, or if we get the high end model. We said, well, we literally flipped a coin and we got the high end model. We got the XLE power doors. And after a couple of trips to Costco and a couple of times wandering up to get the kids into the car when they were little kids, power doors and power of any sort are just godsends. They're great. And I hate the fact that I like the power doors so much, because I should be wanting to have the feel of it's such a stupid thing but opening doors has never been a thing that I thought of as a great chore. And now suddenly it's like, once you have the power doors, you want those all the time. I don't understand why people who have little kids buy anything except a minivan. The thing is about except for the stigma of it. Except for the stigma of there's a stigma to having a minivan. The truth of the matter is your life is 100 times easier in a minivan than it is inside an SUV when you have little kids. Vastly easier.
And much better fuel mileage too.
Much better fuel. Just a better vehicle for managing a family.
Yeah.
The thing it drives me nuts is, as much as I like, and I if you want to go for a genre that I like to hate and hate to like, is the crossover. Is that for most people, most of the time, a minivan would serve them so much better.
Right.
And all that is that for the most parts, is a crossover is just a disguised minivan. I mean, literally, in the case of like the Honda the Honda Pilot,
yeah.
Pilot is an Odyssey with regular doors. That's what it is. And I don't understand why you go into your Honda dealer and you say, well, I got a 4-year-old, a 6-year-old, and I got another one on the way, and I want a Pilot. When I can go, I got a 4 and a 6-year-old, another one on the way, and I can have an Odyssey. Buy the damn Odyssey. Just do yourself a favor.
That's how I feel about station wagons regarding when people always say they want crossovers. I'm going, why? Why don't you just buy the station wagon, save yourself some damn money, and shut up? It doesn't, the station wagon will do everything that that little tiny crossover will do. And there's really only one crossover that I'm like, it gets a pass for me. I mean, look, crossovers are here. They're not going away anytime soon. Car companies can make way too much money off of them. And I hate that. But also the one that really is okay with me is the Mazda CX-5.
Yeah. Mazda right now, the entire Mazda line is, I think, impressive. What's really impressive to me about Mazdas is they aren't selling better.
Yeah,
because
right.
There's. But it's interesting is when the minivan supplanted the station wagon back in the 80s. The reason is because minivans were better than station wagons in fundamental ways. They really made more sense in a lot of different ways.
Mm-hmm.
There was a way to objectively say the minivan is better than the station wagon. I can't the supplementing of essentially crossovers has supplanted both the sedan and the minivan, and they have no practical advantages. The thing is they are completely a psychological improvement. What they do is they appeal to people on a psychological level. They don't appeal to them on a practical level because they're no better than a sedan and they're no better than a station wagon. So what it is that they just like it's the form factor that they like. They like the fact that it looks a little bit more adventurous, a little bit more outdoorsy. But it's nothing. It's completely psychological. It's not practical. The minivan had practical advantages. The only advantages of crossover have are psychological.
Right.
And to me, it's mass hysteria. It's cats sleeping with dogs. It's the end of the universe as we know it. And a good way to end the question, end our conversation before I go nuts.
I really appreciate you spending like almost 3 hours with me, and I will definitely talk to you later, man. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye. So that was very interesting, wasn't it? I think Pearley's an interesting guy. He's one interesting fellow to talk to. I mainly just talked to him on Facebook. But yeah, hope you enjoyed that one. Again, I know it was a longer podcast as well. I know all these podcasts have been a little bit long for some people's taste. But for me, I want to allow people to be able to say anything they want. Just talk. Just talk and not worry about time limits or commercial breaks or anything of the sort. Now, obviously, at some point, the RawAutos podcast will, in fact, feature advertisements and marketing and all that good stuff. But for right now, it's just about getting the content out there to you guys and making sure you guys have something to listen to, even if it's just one of you listening or 10 of you listening or 1,000. It doesn't matter. It's about making sure that the people who are listening have quality content and get something out of it. I think there's a lot to be learned as well. I feel like most of the people that I've talked to now, and believe it or not, I've actually interviewed 7 people so far. So this is the 3rd podcast, and I got 4 more people to put up on there, and I have a few more people lined up. I'll surprise you with those later. But with pretty much everybody, it's been a very similar thing of like they were in a dead end job, or they were doing something that they just didn't care about doing. It didn't mean anything to them. It wasn't fulfilling. It wasn't heartfelt for them. And they got into writing about cars and because they love it, because they appreciate it. And I think that's such an important thing, is to, follow your dreams and feel good about yourself. Being able to look at yourself in the mirror at the beginning of the day or at the end of the day and being comfortable with who you are or the place you are in life. So some people that that I've already interviewed, that I've talked to, that some of them you'll hear next week. My buddy Rob Basil, one of my closest and best friends, dearest friends. He was in my wedding, I was in his wedding, and I think he's a very interesting character. He recently sold his 1950 Cadillac Series 62, but he kind of, he rebuilt as much as he could. And then he also has a 1956 Cadillac Coupe de Ville. It's a beautiful, beautiful car. And he is a mechanic for classic cars, mainly. So he actually is a contract worker for people who need to rebuild, restore, or resto mod their classic cars. And very interesting stories that Rob and I get into. And then that'll be coming up on Monday. On Wednesday of next week will be the extremely interesting Johnny Lieberman, the senior editor of Motor Trend magazine. I'm sure some of you have heard of him. And then next Friday, Jamie Kittman, the amazing writer from Automobile Magazine, New York Times, Car Talk, all that good stuff. And then the following Monday will be John Volker, who is pretty much kind of like the, quote unquote green car expert of sorts when it comes to EVs and hybrids and plug-in hybrids. And John and I think that's the longest podcast I'll have so far. It's about 2 hours long. But yeah, I think there are great stories to be heard with all these people. And I hope you enjoy them. I hope you are enjoying them now. And I hope you continue to stick around and let people know, and people that enjoy a long form conversation where people just have the ability to sit and listen, and I give people the ability to just talk, rant, rave, do whatever they want. Yeah. So until next time, which will be Monday. What is Monday's date? The 6th? April 6th? Yeah, Monday, April 6th, 2020. Remember, continue to wash your hands. Stay away from people that you love. And also, now the White House is saying that maybe we should think about wearing some type of cloth over our face, over our mouths as we're going out into the world to help other people. So continue to do that. Continue to stay indoors, quarantine yourself, even if you're not sick, because you don't know if you're a carrier. You don't know what you have going on in your body. And in the meantime, listen to the RawAutos podcast, share it with everybody. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, please. Subscribe to RawAutos on YouTube, and then Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. Like us all there and everything, so on and so forth. I will see you guys Monday. Well, I will talk to you guys on Monday, April 6th. Thank you very much. Happy motoring.